the most studied structure on the face of this planet. 4,500 years old. Visited by over 14 million tourists every single year. And right now, today, there is a sealed hidden chamber inside it that nobody has ever entered. Not ancient explorers. Not Napoleon's scientists. Not modern archaeologists. A chamber that was detected, confirmed, studied. And then, the Egyptian government told the scientists to be quiet about it. This is not a theory. This is not clickbait. Every single thing I am about to tell you is documented, peer-reviewed, published in scientific journals. And somehow, it never trended, it never broke the internet. Most people have no idea it happened. So let's fix that. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will never look at the Great Pyramid the same way again. Let's start with what you were taught in school. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built around 2560 BC, tomb of the pharaoh Khufu, 4,500 years old, 2.3 million stone blocks, still standing. You know the story. 3 chambers, the king's chamber up top, the queen's chamber in the middle, an unfinished underground chamber at the base, a few corridors connecting them. That's the official map, that's what every textbook shows. Here's what the textbooks leave out. Nobody, and I mean nobody, has ever found the actual burial of Khufu. The sarcophagus in the so-called king's chamber. Empty. No mummy, no treasures, no inscriptions, not even a lid. For a civilization that spent decades building this thing, this monument to eternal life, the chamber we have been calling the burial room is completely, totally bare. Egyptologists have been staring at this problem for 2 centuries. Where is Khufu? Most mainstream scholars just shrug and say the tomb was robbed in antiquity. But here's the thing. You can't rob what you can't find. And what the ScanPyramids project discovered between 2016 and 2023 suggests there may be parts of this pyramid that have never been found at all. Let me take you back to 2015. That's when an international team of scientists, physicists from France, Japan, Germany, Canada, and Egypt, launched something called the ScanPyramids project. Their goal was simple on paper. Use cutting-edge technology to look inside the pyramids without drilling a single hole, without touching a single stone. They used something called muon tomography. Muons are subatomic particles, byproducts of cosmic rays, that rain down on Earth constantly. About 10,000 of them pass through every square meter of ground every single minute. They pass through rock, through stone, through everything. But here's the key. They pass through empty space faster and in greater numbers than through solid material. So if you place detectors inside a structure and measure the muon flow, you can literally see the difference between solid stone and hollow space. It's like an X-ray, but for a structure the size of 40 skyscrapers stacked together. The team set up their detectors, they waited, they analyzed. And in 2016, they found something. Behind a set of distinctive V-shaped limestone blocks on the pyramid's north face, structures called chevrons that archaeologists had noticed for centuries but never fully explained, the muon data showed a void. A cavity, a space, something behind those chevrons that wasn't solid stone. They flagged it, they kept scanning. And here is where the story gets interesting. That detection happened in 2016. The discovery wasn't announced to the public until March 2, 2023. 7 years. 7 years of additional scanning, rescanning, confirming, reconfirming, sending endoscopes inside through the tiniest possible cracks to actually see what was there. And what they eventually showed the world was this. A corridor 9 meters long, that's about 30 feet, 2 meters wide, that's over 6 feet, high enough to stand in. Sealed, intact, untouched for 4,500 years. Sitting right above the main entrance of the Great Pyramid, behind those chevron stones that billions of tourists had photographed and walked past without ever knowing. Now here's the detail that keeps archaeologists up at night. At the far end of the corridor, 2 large limestone blocks. And beyond those blocks, nobody knows. The lead researcher, Professor Christian Gross from the Technical University of Munich, said it plainly, quote, There are two large limestones at the end of the chamber, and now the question is, what's behind these stones and below the chamber? End quote. Even Zahi Hawass, Egypt's most famous archaeologist, a man who has spent his entire career working at Giza, went on record saying he believes this corridor may be pointing to the real burial chamber of Khufu. The one nobody has found. The one that might have the answers to everything. But wait, before we get to what might be behind those stones, we need to talk about something bigger. Something that was discovered in 2017 and caused one of the strangest episodes in modern archaeology. Because the corridor, as significant as it is actually the smaller discovery. November 2, 2017. The ScanPyramids team publishes a paper in Nature, one of the most prestigious scientific journals on the planet. Peer-reviewed, confirmed by 3 independent teams of physicists using 3 different methods. Their finding: there is a hidden space inside the Great Pyramid, just above the Grand Gallery, that is at least 30 meters long. Some later estimates put it closer to 40 meters. That is a void the size of a commercial aircraft. Sealed inside the most famous structure in human history. Not a crack, not a construction gap, not a known architectural feature. A room, or possibly several rooms. The first major inner structure found in the pyramid since the 19th century. Now, you would think this would be global news for weeks. Front page of every newspaper, breaking news banners, special reports. And it was for about 2 days. Then the Egyptian government stepped in. The very day after the Nature paper dropped, Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities released an official statement. They said, and I want you to really hear this, they said the ScanPyramids team should not have rushed to publish their findings in the media. They said the researchers were too early to say there was a new discovery. They used quote marks around the word discovery, like it wasn't real. And then, 24 hours later, the Egyptian Minister of Antiquities stood at a press conference and said the exact opposite. He said the void was a new revelation that had brought the world's attention to Egypt. Same ministry, same week, complete reversal. But even that flip-flop wasn't the most remarkable response. That belonged to Zahi Hawass. Hawass is the Indiana Jones of Egypt. Television personality, author, former Minister of Antiquities, the most recognizable face in Egyptology. When the void discovery hit the press, Hawass went to the New York Times. He said, direct quote, "They found nothing. This paper offers nothing to Egyptology. Zero," end quote. Zero. A peer-reviewed paper in Nature, confirmed by 3 independent teams, a void the size of a plane inside the Great Pyramid. Zero. Now fast forward to 2019. The ScanPyramids team goes back. They scan again from new angles, from inside the relieving chambers above the king's chamber, from the underground chamber, from outside. Every scan confirms the same thing. The void is real, it is massive, it is there. And something shifts. By late 2019, the Egyptian government has the ScanPyramids team back at Giza, this time with official support. And Zahi Hawass, the man who said zero, he is now openly discussing the void as a possible location of something significant. He starts talking about Khufu's missing burial. He starts saying the void might be the most important thing in the pyramid. Same man, complete reversal. Here's the question you have to ask yourself. What changed between 2017 and 2019? The science didn't change. The void was confirmed in 2017. It was confirmed again in 2019. What changed is that the establishment could no longer dismiss it. What changed is that the world noticed. And so the story flipped from, there is nothing there, to, we are investigating what is there. So what is the big void? Let's be honest about what we know and what we don't. The conservative explanation, the one most mainstream Egyptologists prefer, is that the void is a construction feature. Ancient Egyptian builders were brilliant engineers. They understood that massive stone structures put enormous stress on the interior chambers. So they built internal relieving spaces, gaps and galleries that distributed the weight and prevented collapse. The corridor discovered in 2023 almost certainly served this function above the pyramid's entrance. The big void might do the same thing above the Grand Gallery. That's the boring answer. But here's why the boring answer doesn't fully satisfy. The void is huge. Relieving chambers are typically narrow, low, designed purely for structural function. The big void has a cross-section similar to the Grand Gallery itself, one of the most architecturally elaborate corridors in the ancient world. You don't build something that elaborate just to hold weight. And then there's the burial question. The conventional wisdom says Khufu was buried in the king's chamber. But the king's chamber shows signs of being unfinished or changed mid-construction. The sarcophagus has cracks suggesting something went wrong during the build. Architectural researchers have argued for years, based on construction analysis alone, no mysticism, no pyramidology, just structural evidence, that the pyramid's interior was redesigned at least once during construction. What if the final burial chamber was moved? What if it was placed somewhere so deep, so sealed, so hidden, that even the ancient tomb robbers who plundered every other royal burial in Egyptian history never found it? Hawass himself has said, and this is recent, post 2019, that he believes Khufu's real tomb has not been discovered. He believes it exists somewhere inside the pyramid. He believes the corridor found in 2023 may be pointing directly to it. And there's another layer to this. A French architect named Gilles Dormian spent years analyzing the internal geometry of the Great Pyramid using ground-penetrating radar. Back in 2004, 13 years before the ScanPyramids discoveries, he proposed there was a hidden chamber extending from a corridor near the Queen's chamber. Nobody listened. He was called an amateur, a fantasist. The ScanPyramids data didn't confirm his specific theory. But it did confirm that there are spaces inside this pyramid that nobody knew about. Which means the people who laughed at the idea of hidden chambers were wrong. Here's the part I want you to sit with. The big void was confirmed in November 2017. The corridor behind the chevrons was first detected in 2016, confirmed repeatedly, announced publicly in 2023. We are now in 2025. The big void, a structure the size of an airplane, hidden inside the most studied monument in human history, has still never been accessed. Nobody has looked inside it. Nobody has physically confirmed what it contains. The scientists say drilling would risk damaging the pyramid. That's a legitimate concern. I'm not dismissing it. But consider this timeline. 2015, scanning begins. 2016, first detection of the North Face corridor. 2017, big void confirmed in Nature. Egyptian government pushes back, Hawass says zero. 2018 to 2019, Mori scans confirm everything. Government slowly reverses course. 2023, corridor finally announced publicly, 7 years after detection. 2025, the big void is still sitting there, unstudied, unsealed, unknown. Why does it take 7 years to announce a 30-foot corridor? Why does a void the size of a commercial aircraft get dismissed as nothing by the country's most famous archaeologist, and then quietly vindicated with zero apology? The official answers are due diligence, institutional process protecting the monument. And those are real things, legitimate things. But they don't explain the sudden reversal. They don't explain telling scientists they rushed to publish in a peer-reviewed journal. They don't explain a government statement one day and a press conference saying the opposite the next. What they do explain is this. When you are a country whose tourism industry depends in large part on the mystique of your ancient monuments, when the pyramids are your most valuable cultural asset, you have a complicated relationship with discoveries that might generate questions you can't answer. Every time a new void is found, the question becomes, why didn't we know about this? And the follow-up question is always, what else don't we know? That is an uncomfortable question for any institution, especially one that has spent decades presenting itself as the authority on these structures. Here's where we are right now. The corridor found in 2023 ends at 2 limestone blocks. The researchers have said they want to continue scanning, to see what's behind those blocks, what lies below the corridor floor. A new team, the Exploring the Great Pyramid mission, has announced plans to deploy muon telescopes with 100 times the sensitivity of the equipment used by ScanPyramids. 100 times! If they succeed, they won't just detect the outlines of voids. They will be able to produce a true three-dimensional map of everything inside the pyramid. Every void, every corridor, every sealed chamber. For the first time in history, we would actually know what's inside the Great Pyramid. Think about what that means. This is a structure built by human hands 4,500 years ago, before the wheel was common in Egypt, before iron tools existed there, before writing had fully developed. And it is still giving up secrets. The most scanned, studied, photographed, analyzed monument on Earth, and we are still finding rooms we didn't know existed. Zahi Hawass, the same man who said the 2017 discovery was zero, now believes that when the real burial chamber of Khufu is finally found, it will be the greatest archaeological discovery in human history. Greater than Tutankhamun's tomb. Greater than Troy. Greater than any find from the ancient world. Because Khufu was the most powerful pharaoh of the Old Kingdom, possibly the most powerful ruler in the ancient world at the height of his reign. His burial, if intact, would rewrite what we know about ancient Egypt. His tools, his records, his treasures, his body. All of it potentially sitting behind 2 limestone blocks at the end of a 30-foot corridor above the main entrance of the most famous building ever constructed. And nobody has gone in. Yet, I want to leave you with this. We live in an age where we can photograph the surface of Mars, where we can map the ocean floor, where we can detect gravitational waves from black holes a billion light-years away. And the Great Pyramid of Giza, which sits 45 minutes from a major international airport, still has rooms inside it that no human being has seen. Rooms that were sealed before the Roman Empire existed. Before Jesus was born. Before the Bible was written. Rooms that have been sitting in darkness, in silence, for 4,500 years. The Egyptian government now supports continued scanning. The science is advancing. Those limestone blocks at the end of the corridor are still there. And somewhere above the Grand Gallery, a void the size of an airplane is waiting. Whatever is in there, if anything, has been in the dark longer than most civilizations have existed. We are closer to knowing than we have ever been. And that is why the Great Pyramid is not a relic. It is not a solved mystery. It is not something you learned about in 5th grade and moved on from. It is the biggest unsolved secret on the surface of this Earth. And we are, right now, in the middle of finding out what it's been hiding. If this video opened your eyes to something you didn't know, share it with someone who needs to see it. Because the more people who know what's actually happening at Giza, the harder it becomes to keep the answers buried. I'll see you in the next one.